3, 2, 1. Hello, Chris. How are you doing?
Hey, Nathan. I'm good.
I feel great. At this point, there's 2 different ways we could go. I feel like let's just start with children and gender assignment.
Okay.
And the psychology of that.
Just like dive straight in. That's fine. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a little bit we could say. I agree with you. You were saying how maybe it would have helped if there wasn't so much emotional trauma associated with the topic. Maybe that would be nice. And for me, at least, I'm going to catch this on fire, I think. Maybe this is too much. We'll leave it there. For me, it's at this point, I'm like, this is a really interesting topic. Also not one that applies to me. Because I'm a cisgendered man.
That's just what the society has taught you, Nathan. You haven't explored all of your options yet.
No, I haven't. I'll leave that over there. But yeah, it's like it's interesting to think about. It's an important issue. It affects people, right? Yeah. But it's just kind of like there's the thought experiment realm where it's fun to think about and all that good stuff. Think about the theological implications, all that. Yeah. But then there's also just like, there's children with emotional experiences. If you're just kind of imagining the experience of a child, how do we help them through their life and guide them? Right. So, and it's almost like a completely separate thing that to me is like, oh, well, maybe let's just put this first. Like, let's just think about how to be empathetic and considerate towards children and their experiences when they're going through something that's as confusing and difficult as, like gender dysphoria or, homosexuality. Like, I can't imagine how
and even just questions. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that it's like you got to untangle everything because there's just sexual preference, which you can't really relate that to a 5 or 4-year-old. Like, they don't have that. Right. So then it's more like gender identity, but that's almost completely a societal made up concept. Like, girls wear dresses, guys wear pants. Except, in the Bible, they were mostly wearing what we would consider a dress at this point. A robe. Like, there were no pants.
That's true.
So, we've assigned makeup to be feminine at this point, which wasn't always the case. No? It wasn't a case in medieval times, and it wasn't a case with like the Egyptians. And then
that's what I was thinking of.
Like setting aside like war paint,
sure.
Which has always been the most masculine thing, unless you do it now. But your Egyptian generals were more masculine in every way than most men today.
Sure.
But here they were running around in, essentially skirts and with makeup to the nines. So for us to say that's feminine now doesn't make a lot of sense. It sounds like something we made up. It's like, it's like a rule that kids make where it doesn't have any logic behind it. You're like, it doesn't work that way.
No, I want it this way. Yeah. Yeah. You're playing the game wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I usually recoil or have some reaction when people say that there's like genders based on culture because everything I think is connected to some deeper biological function and so even if it's not a good symptom of a biological function or maybe it's outdated, I don't like when it's dismissed. I like when it's analyzed, and maybe you can say after analyzing it you could say, oh well, at this point that is trivial, or at this point that doesn't apply. Yeah. Or it's not significant or something.
Right. And I think you saw, you know, makeup being used amongst like the upper classes of Victorian society, and you know, men were powdering their faces and powdering their wigs, and it got pushed so far into the upper echelon of society that as the lower classes rose up and, you know, became stronger in popularity, then that fell out of favor. And, you know, when you're trying to look down on the aristocrats, that I was like, did I say aristocrats? When you're trying to look down on the aristocrats, you're gonna try to, you know, paint everything they do as less than manly. You know, if you think about the French Revolution, things like that, you know, down with their makeup, down with their cake, down with their foods, you know, down with their filigree and everything.
Filigree, what does that mean?
It's like fancy gold work.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Huh. Do you think that's a universal thing? Is like eventually like the upper aristocratic class was considered pansy like, and that's why like feminine attributes that were at the time just for the upper class shifted towards
just being feminine. I think so. I think it's it's probably connected to a certain level of, you know, sexism that we've always kept in society. Like if you can insinuate that a man is girly, then because we've suppressed women in general for a couple of millennia,
it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, that you can assign that, you know.
Yeah. So do we live in a patriarchy?
Yeah. I mean, we're in a recovering patriarchy, I guess.
Oh. So I don't know what to think of it exactly. I think it could be one of those instances where men and women have more or less negotiated equal value or equal quality of life or something. So there's some equal negotiation that has occurred, but it's slow. So there's been a lot of rapid developments in the past 100, 200 years, 20 years even. And so is it the case that there's just a renegotiation occurring where the gender roles that used to be a good deal between the sexes is now no longer a good deal because, you know, it used to be like, okay, men, you go die in war. Women, you like maintain the household, you raise children or whatever. And honestly, they both kind of suck, but at least it was a good negotiation.
Yeah, although I think that the original negotiation was probably in bad faith. You've got one gender that's basically static throughout time. Like nothing changes about men month to month. And, you know, women would have a situation where, like, if you want to go all the way back, you know, in a cavemen hunting, you know, dinosaurs sort of way, which isn't a thing. But that concept, like as far back as you go, it's not advantageous to be the gender that goes through a menstrual cycle. You know, that
well, yeah, you're incredibly vulnerable when you are having a kid. Yeah, especially.
Right. Then there's the, you know, we see it today. Like there's women who navigate being pregnant, like all the way up to the end with no stop to their activity. But there's plenty that don't. But regardless, somewhere close to the end, the woman's going to be incapacitated and then have a serious amount of recovery.
Yeah.
And without any control over that biological development, you know, things we have now where you have birth control, you have plenty of options that change that dynamic. But before then, yeah, like we had the advantage because we were never going to be incapacitated.
Right.
And, you know, women could choose on some levels to not be as incapacitated if they just kind of left the children to the wolves. But we'd never have that conversation because we wouldn't be here.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, well, it depends. There's a couple of different reproductive strategies for men. Some of them involve consent. Some of them don't.
Right.
So I don't know how that plays into this. I mean, you say it's in bad faith. I don't know if I would say it's in bad faith, but I would say both sides are going to be push the line as far as they can.
Yeah.
Considering the circumstances. So yeah, I mean, females happen to be stuck with the burden of giving birth to a child.
And not that it isn't a magical and glorious thing, as we've discussed.
Yes, yeah. It is magical and profound. Yeah. I'm glad I'm not a woman, but I'm also like so interested by the phenomenon because it is like the most insane thing you could do is like create another human being.
Right.
That's wild. But also, don't have to do it.
Would not want to do that thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, maternity leave has changed things a lot, just different societal buffers, I guess. And also birth control is huge. So, I don't know. You don't seem compelled by the idea that the inequality is a result of changing circumstances. You feel like that probably men's use of force and their physical advantage over women has probably been a kind of a chronic source of oppression.
Yeah, because like think of how weird we get whenever the women wanted to go and fight. Mm-hmm. You've got the Mulan story.
Mm-hmm. It really happened.
It did.
Oh, did it?
Well,
I'm an idiot.
Okay. So
no.
There's like dozens of different legend versions, and it's likely that things like that did happen.
Yeah, I did hear a great drunk history where it was basically the same story, but like in early American history.
Oh yeah,
awesome.
Well, you've got so many different.
Yeah,
I think I've seen that same episode, but yeah, you've got dozens of like, you've got Anne Bonny, and I can't remember what the other woman's name was, but they like snuck into a life of piracy, like because they wanted to, and if they had been found out, it would have been bad for them. Like it's right. Always that situation where if this burden of us going off to war is really so bad, why do we freak out when women want to be on the front lines?
Right.
Yeah. I think also the result of it coming apart would be different if it had been in good faith. Mm-hmm. Like the wage gap for women, the 70% number, like if it really was just for their own good or for the good of society and didn't have a level of selfishness to it, I don't think that you would have women suddenly doing the same job and only getting paid a dramatically lesser amount.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, so you're saying men have been cunning and have played all their cards as much to their advantage as they can, right?
Yeah, and I mean, assumedly we've had more wars than we actually needed to.
Yeah, probably. So what's to say that women are also not playing their cards as best they can to their own advantage? Or do they just not have the same advantage biologically to leverage?
I think in the beginning there was that disadvantage in the original setup, mm-hmm. and then you've just got time perpetuating it.
Mm-hmm. So namely vulnerability in childbirth,
yep.
and child rearing, and physical force,
mm-hmm.
are the two obvious ones.
Yeah, I don't think that early women were significantly physically weaker than early men, but I know science proves me somewhat wrong on that.
Yeah, I don't actually know.
Yeah,
but
I always get into this discussion with various people I'm related to by marriage about like sports and like, well, do we need a women's NBA and a men's NBA? Like, couldn't we just combine each of these sports? You know, my solution is getting rid of most sports, but
yeah.
Like, you know, we could just get rid of football and solve world hunger. Like, you know, so that question in my mind of like, you know, even in like basketball doesn't seem like a brute force issue, or at least it didn't need to be. So couldn't we find a way to like combine women's basketball with men's basketball in a way that would create a fun game to watch?
I don't think so, right?
Well, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure even, I don't know. This is not a really precise analysis, but generally I know that men tend to be stronger, and there's some advantages on like perception of 3D space or something.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you're seeing something that we are dealing with now is on how do you define gender?
Right.
And there's that one woman who just happens to have really high levels of testosterone, who is just dominating. I think she may just be a runner. I'm not sure.
But it's the same thing as the Russians injecting women with testosterone and steroids for the Olympics for
it's natural.
50, 60 years.
This woman,
with her
it's natural. But yeah, obviously that's a little bit cheating.
Mm-hmm.
But it is funny to watch some of the logic dissolve, because in a backward sense, like when you have different transgender people trying to participate in sports, then you have to ask the question of like, okay, how do we define gender? Because we actually do need to create some discrete separation to make the sports fair. Because, you know, especially in like things like fighting, you know, if you have someone who's been a man and has testosterone pumping through their system for 30 years and then they switch, it's pretty gross to watch, like basically a man beating up a woman. Yeah. Like just unfairly stronger than them.
I mean, physical violence is in general gross to me, but
I mean, when it's a fair fight, it's not like watching domestic abuse, you know, of like a helpless person. You know, it's so like there is a need to create some discrete separation at the sport level. Mm-hmm. But when you have a society that is trying to break apart the binary distinction, then when you enter into the sport, I think it's weird. So it's like instead of just letting the woman who naturally has a high level of testosterone participate in the Olympic Games as a woman, she's being forced, I think, to reduce her levels of testosterone artificially in order to participate, which I would probably say is not great.
No, yeah. I mean,
that's the thing that we have to throw out, you know?
I guess the question is, like, is her having... You see, it's not unnatural levels of testosterone. It's just above average levels of testosterone that are from some genetic basis. Like, well, one, there's a problem that'll just only get worse as we get closer to genetic manipulation. But,
yeah,
like I would question, do her testosterone levels need to be lowered from just a general health perspective? But that would also be a matter of like her consent. Yeah. Like, you know, she's willing to do this because it'll allow her to play sports that she cares about. Right. You know.
Yeah, at some point there's probably just going to need to be a negotiation between, you know, whatever sports players and the sport itself of like what compromises need to be made.
They don't have these problems in Quidditch. So
like, because it's not real?
Yeah, mostly that. But like the men and women play all the same time. You're on flying brooms.
That's true.
If we could just design flying, you know.
Yeah, some sport that involves like magic.
Yeah. Or a little technology, you know, little magical flying sticks. You know?
Some ability that's not, you know, doesn't have a big gender difference manifested in it. Although it's tough because even in a game like chess, which is intellectual, it's just like vastly dominated, or the highest ranking chess masters, that's the word for it, it's like 99% men.
Yeah.
And not because we're like forcing women to not play chess. Maybe you could argue there's cultural.
No, well, there's.
But I don't know.
Chess is an interesting one. I think anecdotally, Laura talks about this, but when she was pregnant, she became really, really, really good at chess, and she can't tap into that same level of like.
That's so funny.
Chess play, now that she's not pregnant, but it was bizarre. She would like.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
That's pretty fun.
So there's probably something, as far as perception, patience, and like managing multiple things at a time, which is what chess is. Mm-hmm. There's probably a hormonal level of that, thing. But like, I know they talk about how like, football players, baseball players, basketball players of the 1920s would never be able to compete against the people that we have playing now. So.
Right.
Likely the reason that you shouldn't have women playing in the NFL is because the way the game's developed as a male-only sport for 80, 90, 100 years.
Right. Because otherwise, if it was integrated, then the rules would be adjusted such that it would be fair.
Right.
Yeah. And the game would change and transform.
And it would look something different and maybe involve like a different kind of strategy. But
right. Yeah. No, that's certainly an undeniable fact about a lot of the systems that are in place today. Is like, even if you could say, oh well, sure, it's men and women are different, and I'm standing on that hill. Mm-hmm. It's true that the systems themselves have, I don't know, they nestle into their valleys, I guess. Yeah. And
well, that's the thing. Like, we've talked before about like worship team at church, mm-hmm. and you can make a more convincing argument that the Bible says that homosexuality is wrong than you can make an argument that transgenderism is wrong, because the Bible doesn't really hit the complexity of transgenderism. And so like
that concept maybe didn't exist, dare I say.
It's possible. I would be I think that we have acted as cultures in the past to kind of minimize the amount of homosexuality that existed throughout time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think it's possible that transgenderism as a concept may not be as old as time itself.
Or it was at least not given a category.
Right.
Yeah. I should know. I probably, yeah.
I mean, Mulan was dressing as a man, but.
Yeah, that counts for something. Anyways, I don't have anything else intelligent to say about this, so maybe it's a good time to just move on to history and mythology, because it seems like your appreciation, or at least knowledge for history, informs your opinions about a lot of things. Mm-hmm. Like this gender topic, you happen to know things about aristocracy and makeup and Egyptians. So at what point did you start becoming interested in that, and what happened? Why are you such a freak, Chris?
Right. That's really hard to explain. History has like always been one of my better subjects. Mm-hmm. I thrived in high school in the history classes, and then went for C's and everything else. I went to college undeclared with literally no idea. At the time, I thought I should become a pastor, because being raised in the church and being told that, like, be the best Christian you can be, in my head it was like, okay, well, the best you can achieve as a Christian is to become a pastor.
Precisely.
And back then I wasn't at a charismatic church, so I didn't know about worship leaders and how there's so much less work involved.
Didn't know there were actually 3 options.
Right. Yeah. So I really bounced around between realizing I didn't want to be a pastor, but then kind of working my way into the business stuff, but by then my like difficulties in college had put me way behind in ever getting into like actual business administration. Mm-hmm. And so as I like lingered on going to school part-time, there was the point where my employer said, hey, get a college degree so we can put it on the website. Figure out how many more classes you need. You've been going to school for 15 years. You should be close to something.
15 years. What employer was that?
This was, at the time, it was Rife and Associates. Okay. It no longer exists. But I was, and I was doing financial modeling. But I go in, see an advisor, and I say, what am I closest to? Like, what do I have what's the fewest, what degree can I get with the fewest more remaining classes?
Right.
And they punch it in, and it's history. I was never pursuing a history degree, but every time I had a gap that I needed to fill, mm-hmm. I just fill it with a history class. I think the runner-up on that was philosophy, but that's just because they were really easy classes.
Yeah.
But like any spare moment, anything, I was always pulling in a history class, and that's when I finally realized I was like, oh, okay, well, this has actually just been running around in my subconscious this mm-hmm. entire time anyway. So yeah, I told them, I'm like, yeah, I'm 3 classes away from a history degree. They're like, that's fine.
Nice. Oh, well, yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
The realization. Maybe not with the intention of using it, but
right.
That was just the moment that you realized you were
that it had really been just hiding back in the back of my head the whole time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so a lot of your knowledge also came from those classes, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only took 1 history class in college. And it was good because in high school, all you learn about is like American and European history.
Right.
And that is it. And you, like all the, I don't know, like the weird American narrative version of it, I guess. I don't know. I feel like now I don't even know any history.
Yeah. I mean, it depends on, like, if you still celebrate Columbus Day, then it means you don't have a proper understanding of history. But
yeah.
Yeah, and that was a weird one for me. Going to a Christian school, there, in high school, it was the 48 out of 52 of the founding fathers were all Christians, and mm-hmm. You get to college and it's 46 out of 52 of the founding fathers owned slaves, and a variety of the major founding fathers also probably had non-consensual sex with their slaves.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there was a whole bunch of that in college, that getting knocked, the various understandings that we had been taught just got knocked down one after the other. Mm.
What did that do towards your perception of mankind? Because I feel like that's got to change something, whether you feel like your ancestry is people or monsters.
I think what I picked up on that I feel like not enough people realize today is that they were politicians. The greatest thing I've learned from my understanding of history is when we start going, well, everything's just going straight downhill. Why can't we get back to how it was in the 50s, or why can't we get back to when the founding fathers put our nation together. But now I miss the fire. They're like the horrible sort of political fighting we have now. They had that too.
Yeah, that's. But also they had duels.
Oh, they literally. I couldn't tell you the particular members, but there were fistfights in the Senate. Like, we don't have mm-hmm. that anymore.
Right.
We could use some, but that's.
I don't know if we could. I mean, no, I'm against that, and it is amazing that the fabric of civility hung on in some cases. Or it does hang on. Like, the most we have now is that guy who shouted, "You lie!"
Mm-hmm. Or all at the funeral for Justice Ginsburg.
Ooh, what happened?
Oh, Trump showed up and people started chanting, "Vote him out, vote him out." But yeah, I mean, he's put himself in a position where that's the likely response from his opposition, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know, Teddy Roosevelt was out campaigning and he got shot. And still gave the speech.
And still gave the speech?
Yeah.
Wow. Good job. Okay. So, well, I don't know if you answered my question. Did that change your perception of people?
Yeah, but in a positive way.
In a positive way?
Yeah.
How?
Because I think growing up in the church, we were always taught that, like, now is worse than before.
Okay.
And no.
Oh, yeah. That actually makes a lot of sense.
You know, as humans, we've always been terrible. You know.
Right. Nothing.
As a church, we've been missing the mark for 2,000 years. You know, as sickness, you know, there was the plague, and we don't have the plague anymore.
Right.
We have a pandemic, and it's bad, you know, but we're not wiping out most of Europe.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That does make a lot of sense. Yeah. I don't buy. Even when I was a kid and I first heard that, like, mantra of, like, oh man, the world just gets more sinful, it just didn't ring true to me. And later I just kind of outright rejected it. Like, it's true that I don't know, like, you know, sort of by definition, the progressive viewpoint is the progressive one and the one that will be adopted in the future, and then conservative viewpoints will, you know.
Shh, don't let them know that.
So yeah, I mean, I get that that's happening, but I don't know. That's change. Maybe you feel like that's change is sinful. But I don't. Yeah, that didn't really ring true to me either. I'm the other way, where I feel like I don't know. A lot of it's amazing that what we have now came out of kind of the murky chaos of humanity that is mankind. And yeah, I mean, even like trying to parse through I don't know, just how we developed as organisms and stuff, and what kind of behaviors are encouraged by natural selection. Is like, how did we even get here?
Right.
And it's sometimes depressing, like even thinking about something like how child sacrifice might be advantageous, you know, and that's why we maybe did it. And realizing, like, if I was born in a certain time period, early enough, with enough scarcity, where I was kind of forced to, I don't know, maybe not forced to do anything, but like I might follow those same footsteps, you know. I might have slaves and, you know, be horrible to them. And I don't know how we got to where we are today. It feels a lot better.
Yeah.
I feel like a better person. It just feels weird that today is built on top of these dark blocks, you know?
Yeah. I think each level of society has always been getting certain things right and certain things wrong. And if, you know, as we try to migrate, you know, most of us are always trying to migrate towards getting less things wrong. You know, it's like, you know, it's like the way the left has looked at the Trump presidency and been like, oh, he's undoing all the things that Obama did, and he's you know, taking away all that progress that was made. And it's like, but yeah, that's how we've always done it. It's 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And the same thing vice versa. Like all the rights that Obama took away from gun owners, or pick your topic, and then, you know, that were given back when the next term came in. And it's hard, and I don't like it, but when you celebrate a victory, realize that you may have only gotten some of it temporarily. But if you want to have it all permanently, you have to go through this. You got to move forward, knowing you're going to lose some of it. So get as far ahead as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Never stop pushing for progress.
But do you feel that in your own life, like there's a certain futility to progress you try to make? Or do you not view your life that way?
No, I think that, I know for sure that that's the case. There's different ways of describing it. Like some people describe the different elements of your life are different light bulbs, and you can light one brighter for a while, but it's going to be at the expense of the other ones. So you can invest in your social circle, but it's going to limit the amount of time you spend working, or you can push forward for progress in your job, but it's going to cut down on family time, or your health is going to take a hit. And there's a reason when work gets busy that good eating habits go out the door.
That's limited capacity is frustrating for sure. There's some it seems like little tricks are the only way that you can kind of solve some of those problems. It's like outsourcing mental tasks you have to do, and that may incrementally increase your capacity to 2 bulbs at the same time instead of just one. But it's true. It's not like your development is just a roller coaster that only goes up, right? It's
well,
true.
And there's
manage so much.
I was listening to a podcast once that was talking about how to be healthy in a high intensity working environment, because the guy was he's involved in post-production for movies. So once they start a project, it's 60 days of 80, 90-hour weeks. And,
wow.
He focused on being healthy, but when you're working 90 hours, you're not going to be working out. You're going to be eating junk. And one of the things he actually mentioned that helped him was the opposite of what every other podcast had said about efficiency. Instead, your work setup, you've got your computer, you've got your printer nearby, so that when you print things, you can pull them off without having to get up or anything. And he said, no, you got to actually move the printer to the other side of the room, so that when you print something, it forces you to stand up, get blood flowing, walk across the room. It's make an inefficient workspace, and you'll be healthier.
Yeah. He didn't suggest a yoga ball. I feel like that's number one.
I think, that comes up, but that annoys anyone who's ever in the room with you.
Yeah, that's true. Can't take you seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Purposeful inefficiency.
And now with Zoom meetings, you can't just...
Yeah. So might get the wrong idea.
What's it called? A gimbal? Or what's the thing that need to have the camera bounce up and down with you?
Yeah, perhaps. Just mounted to you. But so let's go back a little bit to history. What do you think that people are missing, or what's the most profound lesson that you've learned by learning history that you wouldn't have learned otherwise, that maybe the world is missing, or people are missing personally? Or is it just kind of a general appreciation for humanity and our behavior in different situations?
I think in general it's a level of calm down, this isn't that bad. Like I said, it's the people saying, well, we don't want to do this because it's a slippery slope before we can't let gays get married because next thing you know what, people will be marrying animals. And we're like, no, they won't.
Yeah.
And I think, not glorifying the past, especially when you start realizing that they were people like us, it's easier to learn from them. We raised George Washington up onto such a pedestal, and he was good at what he did, but then we start trying to like overdo it. We're like, he didn't even take a salary when he was general of the armies of the
army.
What do we call the? Yeah, I can't remember what we called the Revolutionary Army, but that. And yeah, he did ask for an unlimited expense account. So that was better,
Okay. Yeah, I do actually really like that. Like, this isn't so bad. Having a perspective on the world, at least how it's existed in previous states. Is there anything, I don't know, do you at least feel like it's a bit of a weird spot in history, though, still, with technology?
I think technology makes us do some of this stuff faster.
Yeah.
I think that we've always been able... I think we've historically almost always been able to destroy ourselves if we had to. Destroy.
Mm-hmm. If we had to, yes, we could have.
Like,
was it always so easy?
When the population was lower, we could have been wiped out by a plague.
Not really. People in cities could have been.
Yeah, but if we...
Cities are gross.
Yeah, cities are gross.
But like people, someone.
That's why I live in the woods.
Yes.
But if you wiped out all the cities and you were just left with the people that lived in the woods, eventually you would just have, deranged, crazy people that couldn't find other people to mate with, and society would be gone. Also, if you lost the cities, then society is gone. But
that's an interesting point. Yeah. We've regressed in time almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that, it's weird. Our country is, almost 250 years old. And that's compared to various major civilizations, the civilizations that we think we should be up there with, they're all ridiculously, they lasted much longer than that.
Yeah, it's weird to even fathom. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that probably is a big deterrent for people learning more about history, is the unfathomability of long periods of time.
Yeah.
Of places and cultures and environments that you can't relate to.
Well, we can't handle concurrent stuff. Like, there's a reason we never learned about China in school.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was a contiguous civilization of dynasty after dynasty. Mm-hmm. It'd be a whole bunch. It's like a whole nother. What do you call school? 13 years of learning. It's we always have taught it. Sumerians, Egyptians, Greek, Romans, Dark Ages, but it's like Dark Ages, Victorian England, and then the Revolution.
Yeah.
French and Indian War in there, but the idea that, like, to teach Greece at the same time that you're teaching Middle East history or something, and when you do have societies that were going back and interacting, we didn't do that. Like, that's not how we were taught.
Right.
And it was all moving all at the same time, and yeah.
It's true. Yeah. We'll talk about concurrency. It's just like the it's just the way that we think in narratives. It's like the fact that you can condense all of human history into a narrative, or 7 narratives,
mm-hmm.
is pretty insane. And the fact that, or the idea that you could condense what's happening right now into a single narrative or a couple narratives is absurd. Like, there are 7-8 billion people
mm-hmm.
alive, all living their own separate lives and contributing to different systems. And it's like, I don't know.
Well, it'll be 50 years before we'll really know what to skip from the 2020s,
Yeah, I mean, how is it that we pick I mean, in some sense, you get the narratives from the victors, but sometimes there's not really a victor. It's just
it's from whoever's left.
Whoever's left, yeah. So, I don't know how to overcome that problem. There's a similar problem in trying to get people to learn about things that is low relatability. Like people aren't really interested in particle physics because while it's not a ton of information, it's just like there's no point to connect it to in your brain of like relatable experience. Same problem with history, I think, for a lot of people. And a lot of other things that are probably really important to learn, but we don't learn about them. I don't really know how to overcome that besides maybe just having good teachers or something.
Yeah. I know we were discussing what, because Laura's been homeschooling Rowan, a whole lesson plan has to be set aside because she's going to Idaho for a week and a half. And so we were discussing in the car, like, he has to hit his language arts, which is what they call English now. Took me forever to figure that one out. You got to hit his math. You should hit his history. You don't have to hit his botany because he doesn't technically have to take botany until second grade. But it was like, no, I could hit that because I could learn a bit more about botany. I could possibly finally learn to identify poison ivy. That could be useful. How
old am I? Yeah. I should be able to do that. Yeah. So you're learning to be teachers now more than before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well, preparing for my first, there's some day where I think Rachel wasn't going to be there, so they were trying to decide what to do about the history class for Rowan and Emma, and I was like, oh, I'll do it. I have a history degree. I can teach a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old history. So, yeah, I was doing all the prep work the night before and getting really nervous, and I'm like, Chris, you're going to teach a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old's going to be sitting there. There's no reason. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to be nervous anyway. And it went fine. You teach them about it's the Greeks, so we got to talk about the clay pottery. And we talked about the Greek mythology, but it's a Christian curriculum, so we have to compare how messy the Greek gods are. So like our God wouldn't do that.
Yeah. That's funny.
And
you included that in your lesson.
That's like part of the requirement. I was like, I mean, it's true. And it's easier because you're talking to children, and like there's very little, you can only go very short distances in Greek mythology before you've hit like an R rating.
Right. Yeah.
It's like,
it was bad because there were too many gods.
Yeah.
And that's all that you need to
They were petty and they acted like children. Don't act like the Greek gods. Don't be jealous. Don't be prideful.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there the way that you view mythology versus history, I don't know, how do you frame that? Because in my mind, it's almost like mythology predated history, and then we just started to learn how to like record facts a bit more accurately or something like that.
Yeah, but it's so much more stretched out than that because, when I was saying you got to wait like 50 years before we know what was important in 2020, like most of your Greek historians or your Roman historians are always writing like 70 years after the event.
Yeah.
So that like line between mythology and actual factual history is just a blur.
Okay.
There's just as much to figure out from how the Greeks wrote out their mythology as how the Greeks wrote their history.
Okay. So that is kind of how I conceptualized it, and I don't want to say that because it almost feels like heretical or something to say that it's a continuum.
Yeah.
There. But that is kind of my sense of things.
Yeah, I mean,
it's only heretical, I guess, once you start talking about Christianity.
There you go.
But that's what's in my mind.
Yeah. Well, you have the Greeks. Like, we know for the most part that the city of Troy existed and that it was destroyed by invaders. Did they build a horse out of ships? maybe not. Did multiple gods take part in the fighting? That seems unlikely. But did those individual battles occur? Possibly. Like, there's that level back and forth.
Yeah.
And you've got just as much BS running through history. Like, we know that Ramses II built Abu Simbel to commemorate a victory in a war that he didn't win.
Really? They just flipped it.
He just
entirely over. Was that they were trying to feel better about themselves as like a country?
No, he just needed to feel better about himself as a god. Because that's the, as far as like religious, manipulation of a populace, the fact that the pharaohs were essentially considered gods, and what they said was, and the instant that a pharaoh dies, the next pharaoh's sending people to scrape the previous pharaoh's names off of different things.
Really?
Yeah. And so there's a level of like, yeah, he's probably fixing some parts of history and, making things maybe a little bit more accurate. But, that unfortunate situation where they had a female pharaoh, they had to get any evidence of that off the books. And then, you've got Akhenaten, who decided that monotheism was the way to go. Like, you got this diverse Egyptian pantheon. It's like, no, we're just going to worship Ra, the sun god. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it only lasts for his lifetime, but as soon as he's gone, they're like straight back. He pretty sure got murdered for that going too far. And it's like, whenever you hear it doesn't line up historically, but like thematically, when you're trying to fit like Joseph and his time in the Bible, Joseph with the Technicolor Dreamcoat, with the way that he like convinced them all to worship one god, like sounds like the whole Akhenaten situation. It doesn't fit like timeline wise, I don't think, but that's that would be nice. That's how that'd be perfect. Like, there you go. You got Joseph. He convinced Akhenaten to be a monotheist. He was worshiping the sun god. That's close enough. Okay? Yeah. And then the next chapter, the nation of Israel is enslaved by the Egyptians. Building the pyramids that were already built. It's that, like, if we could have made that work, that would have been perfect.
Yeah. So when we are looking at the Bible and trying to, I don't know, or like verify places, times, events, and stuff, are you like deep into that stuff? Do you know a lot about it? Do you feel like we go too far in trying to connect dots when maybe we should be appreciating it in a different sense or something?
No, we look really dumb when we don't try to connect the dots.
We don't try to. Okay.
We're like, oh, it just works out. They're like, no, we've got an Egypt problem. Like, if we have faith that the Bible is inerrant, if you do believe that, then you need to be working on it, because you shouldn't have any fear that you're going to be proved wrong.
Okay, so gotcha. So you think it's pretty clear when the Bible is claiming it's a historical fact, and we should check into that.
Yeah. Like, I don't think we should be afraid of it.
Sure.
Okay. I think there's people that do. I think that in like the modern church, they just say, well, you're thinking too much, or you're overthinking it, or you don't have to. I'm like,
I'm not worried about overthinking. I'm all about overthinking.
Oh yeah.
I'm just saying, like, the phenomenon of trying to, maybe that's not the right thing, but like trying to find patterns in static, kind of like, that was more my question, really. Like, I'm all for overthinking.
Yeah, me too. I don't think God's really like afraid of that. Like, like if we had a God that was really scared of us thinking, It'd just be really weird and like creepy.
Really weird. Yeah. And on a deep sense, that is encouraging to me, I guess, that like I don't need to be afraid to find truth, right?
Right.
That would be silly if I was, because like if you're afraid that what you believe is wrong, then it's not true. Then it's like, don't believe in it.
Like, you know? Like you've already just established that you don't have the faith that you're pretending you have, or that you thought you had. You know, and that's the bigger deal. Mm-hmm. Like,
it's more like, maybe it's because people don't appreciate the difference that there's like their beliefs and maybe like some true religion or true like truth.
Yeah.
like
really truthy true truth. Yes.
Truthy true. Yeah. That people feel like it's the same thing. So it's like if they prove themselves wrong, then they're actually proving Christianity wrong. But like that's not. They're two separate things. Right. What is in your head and what Christianity actually is maybe supposed to be are different things necessarily. Like,
and that's okay.
That's okay.
Well, it's not great, but like, but we've been screwing it up since the beginning. Like, you know, it's instant after instant in the Bible of like, you know, there's missing verses where Jesus just slaps himself in the forehead. Like,
what do you mean?
There's the transfiguration where Jesus goes up on a mountain and is like, hey guys, watch this. And he's got Peter, James, and John with him. And he turns into full, real, glorified Jesus form. And then two other glowing beings come down. I want to say it's Moses and Abraham or something like that, but I don't remember off the top of my head. And,
sure, we'll go with that.
And they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Let's build shrines here. And Jesus is like, no, that's not what that's for. No. Well, part of here, I'm going to show you a cool trick. You know, like, you know, the next example is like a ministry of 3 years, and you're told that, you know, the 12 disciples are there from the very start, and he's constantly like, you know, I'm the Lord God, like, and then at the you know, everything's, you know, do unto others as you have done unto you. It's that, you know, that just love each other sort of mentality. And they hit Jerusalem the last week of his life, and he's like, hey guys, go buy some swords. And they're like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And they get to Gethsemane, and they're, you know, he's trying to pray and they can't stay awake. And he's like, no, come on, guys. Like, literally, we've only got a couple hours left of the whole ministry. You know, stick around a little bit longer. And they fall asleep again. And then Judas and the temple guard and everyone shows up. And instantly one of them, and I'm going to guess it was probably Peter, cuts the ear off like a servant.
Yeah.
Like, he even, like, hit the unarmed guy. But, you know, for Jesus, it was like, okay, what part of the last 3 years made you think that this was when we were going to begin, you know, a physical uprising? Like, you know, we've got, and then just straight into the ministry, you've got the early church fathers trying to enforce circumcision, you know, to non-Jews, and we've always been doing it wrong.
Sure. Well, you know? You I don't know, you exist in your paradigm of thinking, and I don't know what better can you do. I mean, the thing that I'm contending with, and I think everyone has to contend with in the time that they live in, is what are those things that feel like truthy truth, but are really just an artifact of, I don't know, just some natural thought process, you know, like not understanding that you're not supposed to physically cut off someone's ear, you metaphorically cut off their ears, you know, whatever. Because it generally sounds like heresy when you are like, you know, Jesus was literally crucified for being a heretic. Well, is that fair to say? I don't know.
Yeah, basically.
More like he was just... Yeah, because the Jewish people advocating for
they
that.
they couldn't kill people without Rome's permission.
Yes, but they were the real.
But the only reason the Romans were doing it was to get them to calm down.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's so. Generally, when you're actually getting closer to the truth, it just sounds like heresy. So that's a tricky situation, and I think that's a tricky situation I'm in, mm-hmm. and probably a lot of people are in. I don't know.
Well, it's important to remember that when you die and you get to the gates of heaven, there's going to be a quiz. And if you've got, a passing grade on your theology quiz, then you get into heaven. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's how it works, David.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's, yeah. What gets you into heaven? We'll figure that out. The extreme, taking that mm-hmm. joke that you just said to the extreme, it's like, it doesn't matter what's in your brain. It just matters the person that you are. It's kind of an extreme version mm-hmm. of what you just said, but same deal. It's like, it doesn't matter your thoughts, you're thinking the right theology or whatever. It matters like the character of your soul, let's say, or whatever else. And if that's the case, then it's fine for me to say, like, I want to be like Jesus. I want like the end result of my person to look like the perfect Christian, but also the things I'm thinking don't line up with Christian theology. So maybe it's not useful to use that term or something.
Yeah, I mean,
or I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I should say that or just like try to move the term over. Because I don't know. I don't know what point it's like useful to use what term.
It's like you like to think that you could figure out salvation by just trying to act in a way that you're not going to feel guilty. Mm-hmm. And like, we have friends that I know would start getting their pitchfork ready if I were to like make that as what Christianity is. But yeah, like we know it's not a quiz. Mm-hmm. We know that, we know that biblically. We know the mm-hmm. thief on the right hand of Jesus on the cross, said, "Oh, wow, you really are God." And he's like, "You'll be with me today in paradise,"
Right.
And let's not get it. Basically, he was saying you're going to go to heaven. So no quiz. It's that realization. But, what happens for a person who doesn't get the luxury of being crucified and being near death when they get to get saved,
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think most people would like the joke that you made about how you don't get to heaven, there's a quiz. Everyone would be like, haha, yes, mm-hmm. that's so true. But at the same time, if you said something that apparently violated, mainstream Christian theology, they would probably doubt if you're going to heaven.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's that level of like...
What point are you trying to make about the thief exactly? Are you saying there's a bit of
like... He had zero theology, right?
Sure.
He didn't have his, he didn't have his like perspective on women and ministry lined up, like...
Maybe. We just don't know.
Like tithing, it's not like he had gotten everything else right. Like the guy was a thief, and he was so much of a thief that they're finally like, we're going to crucify you. Yeah. Like there's so many steps before that.
Right.
And so to that level, I think you have that perspective. And you've had people try to reproduce that since then. You've got last rites. You've got deathbed conversions and stuff like that. Like people want to get to that, like, in that like, oh no, like what happens when somebody dies suddenly and unexpectedly? They don't have that chance to become right with God.
Right.
And they were playing the game of like, I'll get saved later. And we've got a lot of like biblical or church literature and tracts and stuff about like how that's a bad idea.
Yeah, that will not be mocked.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, if you do get there, like, and and it's that whole the same thing with like faith without works is dead, but but works alone will not save you. It's like, yeah, a change in your heart will cause certain things to happen, and it's a like the physical, the symptom is a mentality shift. Metaphysically, your soul has been, I don't know, washed clean. And
don't hit my elephant.
I've been taking care of your elephant this whole time.
See,
trying to get to the elephant inside.
Yeah, isn't that cool? Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the symptom is the shift in personality, maybe even.
Yeah.
Or mentality.
I like mentality. I think that
whatever the truest character of your soul might be, represented as.
It was reminding me of just a series of conversations I've had where like people's philosophy will change, but their mentality doesn't. So a lot of the time we're in that us versus them mentality. Mm-hmm. Like if you agree with us 100%, then you're with us, and if you don't, then you're not. And you have a person who suddenly hits something and is like, I don't agree with these people, and they go to the other side, and now they're still got that us versus them mentality, so they're still like,
you're actually in the same exact place as you were before.
Right. Yeah, your opinion on this topic changed, and that's great, but really what would help is if your mentality changed.
Right.
It's hard for me where we've polarized so much, where they say, unless you're following this topic, this cause right now, then you're against that cause.
Right.
And it's like,
the math just doesn't work out on that one.
Like I think actually as Christians, we're probably supposed to be doing one of those things like when we've been at our best, like when we were taking care of the sick because we weren't scared to die, like we were always willing to care of the plague people. We're supposed to be in the middle of the two. When we're living in a polarized world, we should probably be just trying to reconcile people. Because otherwise you just have division going forward until the end of time, unless you can exterminate one side.
Right. Yes, that's true. When you're dealing with tribes and symbols, the goal is not some sort of solution. The goal is extermination of the enemy.
Yeah.
Right. And necessarily, a kind of like there's some pretty distinct camps about abortion where I think one is very symbolic and the other one is very practical, where it's like the only way that this one will win is if the whole nation embraces the symbol, or like the side, and then there's the more practical people that just want to like reduce unwanted pregnancies.
Yeah.
And just necessarily, not saying that like anyone is better or worse, but necessarily the practical one is the only one that could actually reach a compromise.
Right.
Because it's not dealing in symbolisms, and maybe symbol isn't the right word, but tribal.
Abstract.
Maybe. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think that like usually one side's not really understanding what they're choosing between. On a like the pure pro-life perspective will kill people. Not okay, yeah, they also did occasionally physically kill people, but the true pro-life, like, we will never interrupt the pregnancy in any way, shape, or form. Even if it means the baby and the mother are going to die, we're just going to let that happen, because abortion is wrong. And that's not like, yes, that's the only option you've got. You can't make an intelligent option where it's like, well, if the doctor decides that in this particular case it's a 100% chance of death for both if the pregnancy continues, so we're going to terminate the pregnancy. Because if we terminate the mother, then the baby's still going to die. Like,
right.
We can't create that because it's being administrated by, like, what, the 453 congressmen we have, the 100 senators, like, the 560 least qualified people we have in the entire country to make medical decisions. That's who we'd be putting in charge of the middle ground, the gray area, the stuff that matters.
Yeah, and I would even argue that the extreme non-resolvable position of saying any form of abortion is wrong, and therefore I'm going to be like Batman and never pull the trigger regardless of the consequence.
Right.
I don't know what the proper name for that is. Not utilitarian. Like, maybe that's true, Maybe it's wrong for anyone to pull the trigger on another human life regardless of the consequences. But it is the case that unless you get everyone on board with that concept, you'll
eventually destroy society. Like,
you'll eventually, I don't know if you'll destroy society. Well,
society will eventually be destroyed.
You may. You'll just end up with a war.
Yeah. A very one-sided short war.
That side might win because they have all the guns.
Yeah, that's the side I was saying.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So maybe, they should just go ahead.
It's,
I mean, that is the thought process I have, because I like solutions. I'm an engineer. Yeah. I like things, I like results. Charts that go in the direction that they're supposed to go in.
Yeah. I think it's hard. Like, there are times in history where we've been like, no, we just can't tolerate this to exist ever again. Like Nazism. Like,
We're not about to analyze the potential benefits of Nazism in certain circumstances.
No.
Hard line. Well,
but
some people disagree.
I mean, that's but if you want to take the pacifistic perspective to solving that situation, like, over time, yes, like, intellectual discussion and calm resolve, like, could we have worked it out over 100 years? Maybe. But there wasn't time.
I don't think so.
It's I think yeah, there's times where we got to do something about it. But
yeah. And that's kind of its own thing that freaks me out about history, is when it's like a coin toss between good and evil, right?
Yeah, well,
one side doesn't necessarily win.
Well, but typically
it just depends on how the cards fall.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we won World War II.
Yeah, I mean, but we also know that Stalin killed more people than Hitler did.
More?
Yeah.
More than Mao? Who won?
Well, as I'm saying, as far as, Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt, like, as far as the good guys from World War II, one of the good guys was, like, just one of, like, in this video game, like, the bad guy joins you for a little while, and he's so utterly badass that he can, like, take, has all the special moves. Yeah, that was Stalin with his Russian army.
Yeah.
And he was bad. So not all of the good guys won. That's why they were, when it came down to Berlin, they were sprinting as fast as they could to take the city, and how we ended up with a West Germany and an East Germany.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Because they were both just going in for
Literally, that's the degree to which the Russians controlled that chunk. And so when, that it's a major turning point in history is what happens right after World War II, because Roosevelt dies and Churchill doesn't get reelected. So everybody coming in from the side of the good guys is new, and Stalin's a dictator. He gets to set his own rules on, and so they're like, okay, let's keep the Allies together and we'll control Berlin together. And he's like, no, I'm keeping what I've got of Berlin, and I'm keeping what I've got of Germany, and all of these other countries, because if I don't keep them, then some European's going to invade Russia again, which he was not wrong. But it's so, like I said, we're lucky when the good guys win, but typically it's just two morons fighting.
Yeah, and so it was still the USSR.
Yep.
And eventually, someone was like, "Mr. Gorbachev,
tear down that wall." That was Reagan.
Right? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then, how did that actually transpire? Who agreed to that?
Gorbachev.
He did.
Yeah.
Why?
He. I don't have the reason that he actually. I'd really have to look up what he said about why he made that decision. But the USSR was in a staggered level of collapse.
So if maybe it was even just some trade restrictions.
Yeah, it was just a level of which is look, we've hit a point where there enough people in mass are willing to die to end this situation. And that was, half of our history classes in high school was the way people tried to sneak out of East Germany. But eventually it just became no longer worth it.
Yeah.
But
it's convenient.
Yeah. But you look past there and they continue to collapse after that.
Yeah.
And they give up all of Europe that they had taken after World War II. But at the same time, it's still worth it to North Korea to do the same thing.
Right. Yeah. And it's astounding, they do still exist.
Yeah.
Just because that's how, the cards have fallen up to this point.
Right. We beat the Russians by making them just constantly build nuclear weapons because they're very expensive.
Yeah, we should be encouraging North Korea.
Right.
Just keep trying.
Yeah, keep on.
We can do another Cold War.
It seems like all of them are okay with 5. Iran, North Korea, they're all good with just having the ability to make nuclear weapons and to have a couple that we don't know about. We can't get anyone anymore to be I want to be able to destroy the world 7 times over. No, we're going for 8.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not totally convinced that any of the nukes we have would actually work. Because they're so old.
I'm sure we have some that work that probably weren't the original sets or the ones built in the 80s or built in the 90s.
Yeah, maybe there's some secret things.
Yeah,
I know that they try to update, they replace the parts and try to keep them up to date.
Yeah.
But it's so old.
Mm-hmm. No, it's scary. Well, my brother-in-law works on Air Force jets with his guard duty, and they're working on planes that were built, in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 70s, the Warthogs, the A-10s are just very, very old.
Yeah. And these nukes were all built, what?
Progressive. They were progressively built from, the 50s through the 80s, but into the 90s.
I swear, Chris. Into the 80s?
Yeah.
90s?
Oh, yeah.
I thought the Cold War ended sooner than that.
Cold War ends in, 89 or something, 87, 89, something like that. But we still had, we put our, that would be the 60s. The Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
When Magneto stopped all the missiles.
So that was the height of the Cold War, not the end of it?
Correct.
Okay. See, I know nothing. This is a problem.
But you know the thing happened.
I do know the thing happened.
Mm-hmm.
Vaguely.
According to Facebook, a lot of kids today don't know about the Holocaust. Okay, so take that full sentence, because according to Facebook, but
oh,
oh
man, that's rough.
You know,
I do think that education is pretty much the solution to everything.
Yeah.
We've got to work on that. That's the only hope.
It's the only way we're going to get more nuclear weapons is if we can.
It's the only hope for everything. Mm-hmm. It's like the only hope for racism and like our political systems and economic like education and exposure.
Yeah.
To information.
Two things that the founding fathers placed no emphasis on in the Constitution or the Bill of Rights.
That's true. I mean, they were wrestling with a more fundamental issue of power, right?
So we want to say that, but like when you go to the requirements to be president, you know, like they were working on something. That's like true. That. They're like, there's got to be some things here. You know, you can't be X number of years old. Like you have to be 35 to be president, you know, at least, or apparently double that, because that's what we do now. You know,
it's ridiculous.
But like, what would have happened if, you know, they had required 10 years of university education before you could be president?
Yeah.
You know,
weed out some people.
What if? What if to be in the Senate you're required to take, I don't know, poli-sci 101? You know.
Yeah, and I think there is a good argument, especially now. Like, you can't legislate Google when you're 90 years old. You don't know how computers work.
Mm-hmm. But, and you know, we're in the same boat. Like, my generation was the generation that could program their VCRs, and our parents couldn't.
Yeah.
You know. Meanwhile, like, I'm standing in Walgreens staring at which cord I need to charge my phone in my car. I grab one, and my 5-year-old says, "No, Dad, that's the wrong cord. You need that one." I'm like, he's right.
He's right. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I will, as I get older, I will have to be comfortable with the ways in which I'm out of touch with the world.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny, the pain or the degree to which you're disconnected as you age is just going to increase.
Yeah.
As technology changes quicker and quicker.
Right. And they're faster with touchscreens. Like, you're better with a touchscreen than I am. You know.
I'm clearly biased towards touchscreens. Yeah.
But, you know, we haven't hit the thing that, like, you're not going to, like, are you going to have trouble with the Tony Stark, like, in space? Of course. You know.
And the inventions that we don't even have yet.
Exactly.
Right? That will be so intuitive to some. Yeah, I've already accepted. I just have to be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And it's going to be weird, but, you know, whatever. But yes, we shouldn't have, you know, the people legislating only in one age group. Right. Or the people being president only,
like we're literally
Gen Xers or baby boomers at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're like half of Facebook right now from a political side is trying to decide whether Trump has lost his mind to senility or whether Biden's lost his mind to senility. Like, yes.
Red flag.
Mm-hmm.
This is the conversation being had.
If they were both 40, this wouldn't be what we were arguing about. You know.
Yeah.
Although now being 41, the idea of somebody like myself being in charge of the country does seem horrifying. But
you're not in charge of the country. You're in charge of
the executive branch.
The narrative that American people listen to, which is important.
It's true.
When you are the person that makes half the country feel like they shouldn't wear a mask.
Yeah. I mean, I've been pulling for masks far before this pandemic.
And just all the time.
I feel like ninjas were basically the apex of societal achievement.
Apex of societal achievement.
I may have been watching a lot of Ninjago now. That's what the children are into. And,
yeah.
That's
funny. Well, to close out, who are you voting for, Chris? Just kidding.
I was asked that question by my father.
Huh.
Okay. Who I've always understood to be a staunch Republican.
I've never met your father.
Yeah.
No.
And come to find out that 40 years of my understanding of the situation is completely wrong.
Really?
That he's felt like he's been an independent his entire life, and he votes on the merits of the person. And
here's that. Is that because he was so private with how he voted?
I guess so. Yeah. Like, I mean, my family's never been known for like good communication, but
I spoke to him 7 times.
Yeah, it's like, but you thought it would have come up between the point at which I could vote to now that yes, it said R or whatever on his license, but so my fear in telling him that I was definitely not voting for Trump like went away at that moment. But the first thing I had said to him before he told me that was, I'm really tempted to vote non-incumbent straight down the board.
Non-incumbent.
So if you're in office right now, I want you gone. Anyone who's in office right now needs to go away. And because like literally the devil we don't know is better than the devils we know.
In this case, yes. Yeah, so, that was like a soft way of
saying that I'm going to vote for like whatever. I've theorized that Biden's been dead for 20 years. He's just like a skeleton wearing a human suit. And yes, I'm willing to vote for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost thought, well, I don't know. It's a little bit comforting because I live in Delaware. You live in PA.
Yeah.
Good old swing state there. But yeah, it is kind of nice that I know that it doesn't matter for me personally. Right. But I did register as a Democrat. I was like pretty certain I would vote Democrat. Still not sure. I might vote third party. I feel like it's pretty hard to justify voting for Trump at this point.
Yeah.
It's pretty... Well, unless you're terrified and you think that,
Oh, right, because of the Harris president or the Harris administration. That
yeah, I need to get more in the mind of the Trump voter, I think.
Everything you're being told by mainstream media is a lie. That's the mentality of the Trump voter.
Yeah, but I also I don't know if I think it's a lie. I think it's
everything you're being told by them. Or by the mainstream media, but not everything they're being told by an equally sized media. Yeah. It's hard to get the point across to everyone that they're all lying to you.
They're all lying to you.
Yeah.
Right.
It's actually just about drama that creates views and clicks and advertising revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're probably running long. But we could totally go into...
You can cut anything you need to.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, I think today about... I was wondering if someone asked me, are you worried about the coronavirus? What my response would be. And, like, yes. But then I just started thinking about all the other things I was worried about and how much more concerned I am about them. Like... What's the future of a society where we are kind of sitting ducks to the effects of this frictionless advertising and algorithms that are optimized for attention? And like, I am horrified about that, and also worried about coronavirus, but kind of like way down. Like,
with Maslow's hierarchy of needs or something like that.
Maybe that's it. I've always said Pavlov, but that's the dog.
Yeah, he's the dog.
What's the real name?
I think it's Maslov. I'm not sure.
We'll look it up after.
It's really good that we got this on camera.
Needs.
Yeah, we've replaced it now with the hierarchy of anxieties.
Yeah. What's the place with no anxiety? Like the bottom?
Death.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the appropriate level of stress to have.
I think the important thing is to stay in your house and never go outside.
Yeah. We'll just get some gold and canned goods just in case.
Yeah. Don't get me started on the differences between gold and paper money because they're just shiny rocks.
Gold-backed currency?
No. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
The idea. Okay, fiat currency. The idea that something's, only worth something because we say it is, as opposed to gold-backed currency, where in reality there's a shiny rock that lines up with your dollar bill. Mm-hmm. But the gold only has value because we've assigned a value to it.
Yeah, but it's at least scarce. It has one more property than the paper money.
We think that it's scarce. But diamonds are incredibly of value because they're scarce. But that's because we've limited access to them. Yeah. Like, what happens when somebody's digging in Central Africa and finds the rest of the gold?
Right. Oh, well, okay.
So
the risk of that...
my currency being backed up by the U.S. Army does feel more stable.
That's fair. Yeah, which one is more...
Yeah.
Okay, all right. When you put it that way,
yeah.
That's fine. All right, well, this was fun.
Good.
Talk to you. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There probably is.
I can always be your first repeat guest.
Hey, yo. I think Caleb really enjoyed it. I'll have to have him back, too.
Yeah.
But, I'll be back sometime.
Just not before you have me back. And then...
All right.
Cool.
Goodbye, everyone.
Peace.